Take two.
Take 2, 3, 4. It's getting stupid.
Yep.
So eventually it's just so stupid we don't even care, and then you guys just have to watch the damn show. It doesn't matter. If you hate it, just turn it off and go to the next video. It'll cycle through. Bob Knott here from Still Oregon, Wisconsin Gardener. Getting sick of saying that. Back here at Pig Farm. So blown away by your last results from what we saw with your last alkalinity. We needed to come back up, kind of discover a little bit more. We've gotten a lot of viewer questions, a lot of people getting engaged with this. You know, there's a lot of guys running out immediately after our first videos and buying up all the tools that we knew about at the time. The downfall is a lot of these people are buying tools that aren't necessarily going to work for them at this time because of their pH issue.
Right.
We have some ideas, some solutions. We've been talking with a cat, David Miner out of Wisconsin, who's also been looking at different home experiments for smaller grows.
Small gardens, yeah.
You're blessed, because one thing I don't think we mentioned on our first video was how much your well that you're pulling out of now for this location has how much CO2?
About 450 parts per million CO2.
Okay.
So that's bringing my pH in my water down to like 6.5. So that's why I'm having such a good reaction and results with the calcite reactors, is my water is naturally coming through out of the tap at like 6.5, where if you're like 7.2 or 7.4 and you're thinking that these calcite reactors are going to work for you, it isn't going to work the same, because
you need the acid to dissolve the carbonate to make it a bicarbonate, to make it solubilize into the water. And the downfall is 7's neutral, 7.4 is alkaline or base, 6.4 is acidic.
Yeah.
And what we need to do is create an acidic solution to then dissolve the calcite to make the bicarbonate solubilize in the water source.
And basically what this means is there's no easy answer. You need to do your water tests, and you know, everybody's kind of got to be their own water chemist to that point.
It's going to definitely be a learning curve on
every
on
garden's going to have a different answer.
And pretty soon I'll have some video links from Dave. He's doing some home experiments with what he's doing is he doesn't have the CO2 reaction, he doesn't have the bubbler like you've got a reef tank. So you can have the luxury of running CO2, like a CO2 charger that's
through a calcium reactor.
Yeah, and what's happening there is you're taking the neutral water, and the CO2 is creating carbonic acid in the water solution. And the nice thing about carbonic acid is it stabilizes at 6.3, 6.4. It won't ever drop below 5 or any of that. So you're never going to create such an acidic situation where you're going to be chasing this problem down the road with still having acidic soil. But what Dave found was, and he's a small, personal grower, just a few plants. He's taking all of his feed solutions, so he's building up his food, all of his normal recipe, gets it to about 6.4, then he adds in another 1 to 2 teaspoons per gallon of Olympus up to get up to about a pH of 8.0.
Okay.
Then he's taking carbonated water from the store, 99 cents a gallon for just, sparkling water with no flavor. CO2 rich water, and adjusting the pH down with CO2 water versus Hades down. And now we were discussing this a little bit earlier. Can't most gardeners just drop their water to 6.4 with Hades down or a phosphoric acid, run it through your calcite, create the alkalinity, solubilize that, which all of that would work. The only concern we'd have there is over a long period of time, the phosphorus in phosphoric acid is like a 0.550 in pure form. So by continuously doing that, what's going to end up happening with the phosphates in the soil?
Right.
What you're doing is way more naturally occurring, so it's you're getting that calcite without the buildup of the excess phosphates. So there's many home remedies that we're playing with.
Things yet to be discovered also.
A lot of discoveries.
It'll be a year before we have this all ironed out, probably.
Yeah, but a fun year of watching weight gain. That's the beauty, is that we're not seeing
it all makes
lacking.
improvements. That's right.
Every tweak, and today we discovered that one room will have a higher level of CO2 by their controller versus another room, but the soil slurry in the higher CO2 room is far more acidic than the room that has the more standard CO2. And then again, it's that CO2 in the space is releasing that alkalinity in the soil. The plant's taking that up and leaving behind a lower pH soil. So now they're playing with adding pelleted limestone, the lignin-based pelleted limestone, calcite, We're trying a calcite run. They have a fine product called microna, which is a fine flour type limestone that they can add for a fast reaction.
Flour, yeah.
Super fine. It's about the same mill that we use the bone meal for. I mean, literally flour. So we're kind of running different experiments. We're starting to do some custom soil blends, trying to figure out, okay, what do we need to do to get this to this point? So stay tuned. I think we're just going to be...
We're just basically doing a slurry test every other feed, which is once a week, and tracking, you know, like whether it raises or falls, and trial and error is the only way we're going to learn from this.
And plant response. I mean, you guys are seeing the plant response. You can definitely tell which ones are stoked, which ones are not happy, but...
we're seeing the best plant response above 6.5. It seems like once we hit, like, even at 6.4 in the soil slurries, it seems like the minute you hit that point, that's where the plant stops and the ppms will start stacking up. Or if you can keep them,
it's crazy.
If you can keep the pH up, they'll literally eat everything. And that's why at one point I look back and why I was feeding so much is the pH was in range and I was having to keep the plants, you know. And that's when shit was just...
It's a different day.
It's a different, yeah. It's a
and it's that 6.4 to, you know, really like what, 6.35 to 6.8, and that range is kind of that sweet spot of just, I can't give it enough. I mean, we're watching, I'm looking at their feed charts, and it's, you can see the slurries just slowly dropping, but the ppm slowly climbing. Everything we've talked about online and all these Facebook groups for years is, you know, if that's why we say slurries are so important. If your parts per million are high, something's wrong with your pH, and if your pH is perfect, then your parts per million should be none. I mean, they should just be consuming it like a straw. And so we're watching as his pH drops, his ppms climb, and now we have to figure out, you know, I mean, at 120 parts per million of alkalinity too. That's what's crazy. Now, with that being said, you guys charge rooms with CO2. You have all the VPD controllers. I mean, you have some dialed in spaces on the level of the environment's really, really high end, and a lot of people don't have what you guys have on this level.
Controllable environment.
Yeah, so you guys have so many more variables through CO2 injection, through just ventilation, through the fabric pots, the type of soil, the volume of soil, the water sources. So many variables. You know, my fear is a lot of people hear these videos and they're like, well, if I don't have a calcite charger, I can't use nectar. And it's like, well, you know, we've been doing pretty good for about 18 years with this company without any of this alkalinity calcite chargers. The trick is understanding how the alkalinity works, and then how do we kind of implement these ideas into each and every different garden being totally different gardens.
With all the different variables.
So
yeah, and that David, he's the one that turned me on, and he sent me a study. I don't know where he found it for sure. Maybe he could put it in the comments or some shit. But he's got a study on, I wasn't even aware of, like, the CO2 in the air is going to react inside the medium. And, you know, so now we're just kind of on the test of that. We've lowered our ppms of our gas from like 1,300 down to 800 just to see, like, if that'll
slow down the drop.
Yeah, slow it down too.
Because, I mean, that drop is, what week was that room in that was showing that lowest ppm or lowest pH with the one on the end on the left?
The back left, that
yeah, how far into bloom was that?
22 days or something. Yeah, 3 weeks.
So now you're literally going into the next week is probably one of the biggest feeding weeks for production and diving, and so we're starting to see that pH slip below the optimal side. Now our feeds are going to start not absorbing at an efficient rate, and then we start chasing our tail again.
Yeah, and like from what we've seen, it's if you see it drop that low, you've already lost that time. It's like getting a haircut and wishing you could put more hair back on. You got to catch it before it happens, because like even like in veg, the amount of size difference in the structure and the rooting of the plant,
of the stem size,
it's dramatically different when it's in range versus out of range.
Now, did those in that last room just recently get a Calprol or a pelleted lime? Today they got the pelleted lime. So it's about a 4 to 5 day return time to see that reaction.
A week, I would almost say. A couple feeds.
Now I'd be curious on on a room that size, taking Olympus, taking your water at 6.5 out of the tap, jacking it up to 8 with Olympus up, and then hitting it with soda water to drop it down to 6.4 again, and then water that in, because that would be alkalinity right now. No running it over calcite, no charging it, no nothing. It's literally, because, I mean, Olympus Up is literally liquid microna. We take microna and we hydrolyze it. We blow it up and we turn it into water. So by jacking it way up and then bringing it back down with the soda water, I wonder how fast that would fix that pH issue in that last room and get it back into 6.4.
Right.
That might be something to try on half of that space. Just go buy a couple gallons of carbonated water.
Flowable lime at that point, then. Huh?
It truly is. Instead of, because it's instant, we've already done the breaking up. When you put lime or microna on, it has to go in and it has to either hydrolyze through acids or it has to be consumed by microbial.
Yeah, we see it when we top dress, we'll see it in there for 10 days before it's completely
Washes all the way in.
Yeah.
Where Olympus Up has already gone through all those cycles. It's already a bicarbonate. We just have to convert it into a pH where it can be usable.
Yeah.
So that's another trick. Write that down. Might be something that might be valuable.
We should need to start messing with.
Or just watch this episode next week.
And that like, and then also like for the big farms, it could also be as easy as literally buying an aquarium calcium reactor and exchanging water through it, because you basically have your cylinders then filled with limestone that you are injecting CO2 in there through the controller on the reactor, and you could basically do whatever you want, add as much carbonate to your water as you wanted that way. The only problem is you're going to be doing a lot of testing with your manometer to make sure you're always in range, because your amount of water, unless your amount of water you use is equal every day of the week, you're going to test that shit, or you're just going to get high or low on you without you knowing.
Well, and a lot of people are looking at the big expense, but when you are a large farm and 100,000 square foot warehouse space, that's not that much of an expense. Expense. No, I wouldn't do it for a 4-plant grow in my back bedroom. No way. I'd do it in one of these and drop my pH and run a different level. And soon, in collaboration with David Miner, he's making some professional videos in the next coming weeks that are just how-tos and matter of facts, and we'll put links to them. The guy's really just like dove in head deep, and thanks to you again, that triggered his conversation, which triggered it's triggering a bunch of people to actually start
to research it,
and that's great, because we're getting
he's deep in the rabbit hole.
Oh, and he's a hot pepper grower too, so now he's got this whole different crop he's working with, which is what he's seen is just the availability for, the pepper production is through the roof. So
it's dramatic.
It's a huge difference.
Huge difference, but we got to figure out, everybody's garden's going to be different.
Everybody's going to be different.
Yeah.
So I brought up some viewer questions that all about alkalinity, and I figured why not bring those questions here, because this is where our conversation began, and I think it'd be fun to hear a farm that's been chasing this for a year and a half. I'm really paying attention and chasing it. I want to get your guys' point of view on these questions, because I think it's entertaining.
And whatever we ever say, it doesn't mean it's fucking right, so don't take this shit to...
Well, or else I'd be getting paid a lot more to be fucking right. And
everything we do around here is trial and error.
I had to drive a long time to get here to lie to you.
Success, so...
I know you love the guys that thought we were doing this for extra money. Yeah. I made $3 on that last alkalinity meter, and then one of the vials broke, so I lost $4.
Yeah, it almost ends up being more of a pain in the ass than it's worth. But
it is. But when you see a smile on a farmer's face, or you come back to the farm and they've seen an increase of 1.5 or 2 times of what they're used to, that right there is why I like doing what I do. I hate my day-to-day. There's days I go home and I just want to put my head underwater and stop breathing. But then there's days where I would come home and I'm like, we discovered some shit today that makes me so happy, and I'm excited about it.
Learning is like where it's at still.
Well, or else you're bored, and then you get into, then you go to 1 pound of light, and then you want to give up. And
life's a lot better when you're around happy plants too.
Well, your plants are a lot happier when you're happy.
I don't even like being here when the plants aren't happy.
And they show you.
Yeah.
This is for the fuckers that are living with their plants.
And there's a few. There's one guy in LA that has completely, you've ruined
living and dying with your plants.
Oh, he does. He's like, I don't have a wife, I got 2 dogs and 4 rooms, and I just crush it with nectar. And he's like you. He's just discovering. He's asking thousands of questions, but he keeps coming back with just great intel on stuff he's figuring out. But that's it. Is the guys with passion are what drive this industry. Everybody else is just selling product, and that's boring. We saw your fancy San Francisco purchase. Cool art, shitty bud.
Yeah.
It's all about the art. All right, well, I'm gonna read a few questions.
All
I'm gonna
right.
get the hell out of your hair, but I got Bob sent me these this morning. First one is from Mighty Rooster Contracting. Probably didn't want me to say that. He's probably in like a state that's like, oh wow, go find him. Hi, Scott and Bob and Pig. Hi, Maddie.
Yep, you added that in.
All right. The alkalinity from my tap or well water is 500 and 58 for my RO. It's too high. Is too high an alkalinity a thing? And if so, how do I fix it? Love the show. I'm learning so much. Well, my concern is where the hell are you getting 500? And if it's a well, I'm guessing you have well salt that you're adding in, which would be a yeah, it's a water softener that's giving you sodium carbonate, which you want to tell them about sodium carbonate in plants?
No, you don't want to do that. When we were first discovering this, I got some sodium bicarbonate and gave it to the plants and burnt the shit out of them. And
Pure salt.
yeah, it burned them and they finished still and tasted. Well, it was like I growed it with Botanicare or
It
something.
was like 1985 and you're picking stems.
No terps left. It just
I know.
yeah, it wasn't good.
Mighty Rooster, if you could email me at thebeard@organsonly.com, blah blah blah. Let's figure out what the 500 really is from. There's ways we can get around that, but I'm curious if my well comes out at 275 because it's pure well salt, and so I can't use my well water for anything. I have to bypass it to a just straight well, no softeners.
Yeah, bypass the softener, and then like even if you're in a situation of where you have a 300 part per million natural well and there's a ton of iron and shit in there, you can put it through your RO, and that's going to take out probably, I mean, they say 98%, but it's going to be more like 90, so you're going to still end up with 40 parts per million, which is still going to make your pH so high that you're not going to be able to use the calcite thing. So at that point, you could run it through a deionizing chamber, which will strip that 40 parts per million down to about 0 or 1, and then your pH should be around 6.5 and able to pull
Through the calcite.
carbonate off the calcite reactors. But you know, that's deionization resin is not that cheap. You know, it wouldn't be super affordable for large gardens.
If you're a 4-plant grow, that may not be your option. You may
well,
just wanna-
it would be because you wouldn't need to make a lot of water.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's
I think
true.
these large
large
gardens
farms
that
need
are
to do
doing it,
a
they need
water
to do
system.
Yeah, they need to have an acid. They need to inject CO2 into the water.
They
And
need a CO2 reactor straight.
freaking the reef tank calcium reactor on their water reservoirs.
Grow anemones on the tops, not in the tanks.
No salt in that. Just the carbonate.
Yeah, so there's that. All right, Guy Atchley. So will the calcium carbonate powder suffice? Adding to the soil and water, will the microna work? Yes. Adding to the soil and water, if I add it just to the water, it gets too cloudy for the alkalinity meter.
I can't read.
Yeah, and it's not soluble, so don't bother. So I split it in between the soil and the water. I'm a small home grower. I may be able to swing a Boogie Brew filter 3,000 into this thing, and the wife isn't happy. Yeah, well, keep her happy first, because you don't get to grow and you get half your shit gone. So don't add the microna or the limestone powder. Well, first off, let's talk about the calcium sources that people are using. Don't run out and buy gypsum, and don't run out and buy dolomitic, and only because you don't know where your sulfur levels are or where your magnesium levels are. Dolomite lime is a heavy magnesium. It's usually 22%. So that's a lot of mag to get you alkalinity.
Yeah.
And if you don't need that much magnesium, then don't put that much in. It makes your stuff firecrackery. It keeps your flower burning when you light it on fire. So avoid that. Sulfur in gypsum is often too much. So a lot of people put down gypsum and they get these really bad overtones in the flavor, and the overtones, not undertones, but just like garbage flavor. So calcium carbonate from limestone. Simple. That's all it is. There's nothing more to it, just
No
carbonate.
magnesium, no sulfur.
We're trying to convert that to a bicarbonate through an acid reaction, whether it's carbonic or phosphoric or citric, whatever. Dropping the pH, running over the limestone makes a carbonate into a bicarbonate. That's where you have the powder. If it's, as long as it's a limestone, sprinkle it on the soil. That's what these guys do. They do a slurry. Yep.
Work it in. Like
Water
you're
it
kneading
through.
the pizza dough, work that shit in. Get it down in there.
With pizza dough, and we didn't have any pizza today, even though that's their specialty.
same thing. We always call it making pizza when we're
Kneading in
Kneading in
the gums of the
microna.
bone meal on the
Yeah.
surface and the
It
limestone.
feels the same.
So definitely make your wife happy. Keep all your equipment. We can still use the stuff that we're going to be using, but take the limestone, sprinkle it right on the soil surface, water in at 6.364 with all your feeds. It's going to make that limestone more available over time. So if your soil's drifting down, just keep top dressing with the fine powdered lime.
And when we top dress with it, like with the microna, we're coming in with on a 20-gallon pot. If we're going to top dress, we're going in with 10, 12 tablespoons,
Yeah, 6 ounces.
3/4 of a cup on a 20-gallon pot.
Yep.
That's what our starting point is, and then track it. If you're going to really get into this shit, you got to
Two feeds.
you got to
Well, you gotta
slurry.
chase
You want
it.
to slurry before every other feed at least.
Yeah.
I think doing that between every feed's kind of overkill because it doesn't even give the time to react that you did.
I
But
agree with you.
Once a week,
for
good
the
rule
most
of
part.
thumb.
Same guy. Guy's his name. His parents named him Guy. That's fucking bad. Hey, Guy. Alright. I just fucking think that's badass. I'm gonna name my kid Blenderhead. My wife said no. Like, Blenderhead, that'd be a badass name. Alright, so he says, you guys are freaking amazing. Apparently I hit it on the head. His temps were too low that's what gave him his purple stems. So he had really purple stems, but they didn't look like a phosphorus issue. It looked
This
like
is
cold.
yeah.
So he fixed that.
Cold roots.
Could be cold roots too. Cement floors, keep them nice and cold, and purple out stems really nice. Adding the calcite to my soil, when would I start doing that? Kind of think we hit that, and just look at your slurries and start adding it in. If you know traditionally you're just crap, then I would say go ahead and pre-build your soil going into the bloom stage, so when you do start blooming, you have it built in all around the root mass, and that's what they'll do with like the calpril, the prilled limestone. They'll put a layer down and then add some to a filler mix, and they just kind of backfill.
with it, yeah.
And so it's all around at all times. So I would say mix it in before you go into bloom, and try to mix it into your actual potting medium so it's more widespread, not just the only top dress. Blah, blah, blah. I'm just gonna go to the next one. Dogs and discs. Any help figuring out what calcite chargers to use? Avoid ones with mag. Well, it's what you put in the things. So the cartridges are just the hardware, and the software would be the calcite.
Right.
So you can put whatever you want in there, but look for just calcium carbonate, nothing else. Emery, is that Emery's?
Yeah,
Is that
we're
what you
using
did?
Emery's. I think
Yeah.
it's like number 28.
Yeah,
size
it's
or
ultra
some
white,
shit.
number 28, and then
Yeah.
there's a place out of the Midwest, or it's calcite. It's
Yeah, just
everywhere.
make sure you look at the percentage and know
Yeah,
that it's not
zero
the one that has
magnesium.
magnesium in it. Yeah,
So avoid the dolomitic ones; those
it's
are
all
bad.
pretty much the same, different bag. You get the calcite, that is.
So Tommy Tomato, I feel like I have a reverse lockout. Reverse lockout. I read that right. I've been stuck at 580 parts per million for 10 days, and I think that's my zero if you follow. I think that's my zero if you follow. Should I resume my feedings?
My
Ask the
zero meaning
kahuna
that's what his water is? 580 parts per million?
I feel like I have a reverse lockout. I've been stuck at 580 parts per million for 10 days. I think that's my zero, meaning that 580 is just the base, so you can feed higher than that and they take it, but I've got a lot more questions for you, Tommy. I'm gonna need you to email me
Yeah,
at beer.
what soil he's in and
Yeah, I need to know what the 580 is coming from.
the
and-
pH of it.
Yeah, what's your pH? Because if your pH is below 6.2, then your 580 is because your pH isn't allowing your food to go in.
Yeah. Stop feeding at that point.
Tommy, reach out, give me an email, we'll ask you more questions, and we'll just refer the show, and I'll go back and we'll figure that out. And then I'll call you and let you know.
Yeah, yeah. It'd be interesting to know, it's like 580.
That's the one thing I do like about my
I've seen
job.
580 and wondered, like you said, if
Oh,
I
we
see
saw 580 today.
It's probably 5.8 or 5.9 on your pH. And
Oh, yeah.
You've been feeding for, just like you said, 10 days, 2 weeks, and it hasn't gone down any.
Yep, and they're eating, but they're not eating well or efficient. They're just taking it in and they're staying alive, but they're not stoked.
Yeah.
So we get that parts per million down, but I bet you, like he said, get us the slurry, pH, and let's figure out that, because that's probably going to be our biggest issue. Let's get your pH back up. All right, Fred Weber has an alkalinity of 19. Would the calcite system be recommended for him? I know I am a little low on the scale. Yeah, 19. Still have a lot to learn. We all do. Thanks, Bob, for all the knowledge. So again, pH is going to be your biggest question. Or the biggest question for you is what's your pH of your water?
At 19.
At 19, you're probably pretty low. I would imagine you're, because often when we see high alkalinity out of a well, we'll see a higher pH, like a 7.4 to 8.4.
Yeah, when you guys ask these questions, you should always put on there, like, what's your water source, even like what state you're in, because it helps us gather more information without having to ask.
Very rarely are you
More
going to
because-
offend me with information.
Yeah,
like
the
coming
more
out of the
information
gate.
we, the troubleshoot, it's like we need to know what their water source is. And
Well, to help the next guy, because the problem is I'm going to answer your question on an email, and this show and everybody viewing this show is not going to get that answer, so they're going to have to wait. And, but yeah, give us your
creates 10 more
pH is probably your
questions.
issue.
yeah.
But again, I can't really answer that until we know. So this alkalinity meter, this is Patrick Teich, T-E-I-C-H.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So is the alkalinity meter the same as a ppm meter, or are they different things entirely? Feel kind of dumb asking, but it is what it is. Thanks, and I appreciate all the info. Well, it's just how they read that one thing. So if you go on the Hannah's website, you can get a meter for every damn element on the planet.
In the water, yeah.
And they've just designed and calibrated, like the alkalinity meter, they just shoot light through water, assess where you start, and then you add your reagent, and it highlights the alkalinity in the water, and it counts the molecules. So everything, they'll have a reagent that creates a counting point for every element you want. So your parts per million, your whatever,
Measuring
truncheon,
everything. It's measuring everything in there.
every bit of salt, every bit of electroconductivity, that's what it's reading.
Yep.
Alkalinity meter is reading simply alkalinity of the water. Now the real shitty thing is there's like 4. If you go to
Four
Hannah's,
of those meters?
yeah, there's the marines, there's the fresh, and then there's that symbol, which it's like the UE.
Oh, the MEQ, or
Yeah.
Then there's different measurements within
Yeah.
each meter. Yeah.
So if you're like a crazy European reef tank guy, you don't want the one that we're gonna ask
you want
to
the
get.
freshwater PPM
Yeah,
version. It's
it's 775. That's the HI 775.
775, yeah.
So just look for the fresh water. If it says marine, it means salt. But your truncheon's reading everything that's soluble in your soil. That tells you how hot the soil is. Alkalinity does nothing about fertility. It's all about hardness of the water. So there's that. Let's skip this big one, but I'll address this with Bob. Why'd you send me these big ones? All right. Alkalinity came back from DK. He said his alkalinity came back at 73 and his tap water is 130. Am I good?
I would say that's probably pretty good. Yeah.
Well, this brings up a question for me. So as we are discovering, as you guys are discovering, and I'm reaping the benefits of your discovery, we're seeing at 120 parts per million in the veg cycle isn't as optimal as 120 parts per million of alkalinity in the flowering cycle. And so like this would be one of those scenarios where, oh, you're at 73, maybe you stick with that during the veg and then
Up it
try,
for bloom.
yeah, blend them
Perfect.
through the transition and then do like an 80-20 with your 130 to your 75 and try to balance them out that way.
Yeah, when we're up to the 120, like when we go from like a little rooted clone into a 1 gallon pot, if you feed a nectar load with that 120, it's a little hot.
It's a lot of food.
It isn't the calcium, it just creates so much uptake. And it's just so much more uptake of the nectar nutrient that
Well, and we were discussing
We hadn't
that
seen
in an
before.
old Green Room Live film from way back in the day. You remember doing that?
yeah.
And you were up there talking about the bloom chaos, and through our community, people now call it the throttle. And I think I wanted to redefine the throttle today. I want to call bloom chaos nitrous to the alkalinity, which is the throttle. And I think that's what, I mean, you guys, if you're doing the 80 going into veg, you're just kind of going in at like cruising at 45, but once you hit flower, you give it the gas with a 120 and you're going in, 120 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, for this person to try try that. Try your veg with just your 73 and your 130 on your bloom room and see what the difference is on your uptake. But I think you're going to find that that's probably going to be your best bet, is blending them or going with one or the other in the different cycles. I have a woman up in Maine who started a farm for children, and I've talked about her a couple times on the show, but she had an issue where, you know, she got into it. Everybody fucking, the hydro stores are sharks. They see this new woman coming in going, I'm going to start a farm. I'm doing it all for the good of mankind. Here, you need an RO. I mean, if you're doing anything weed, you got to do this, 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 and this. So she bought all the tools that make you a good pot grower. Well, the RO is stripping everything out. She's been struggling with low pH soil. She's been watching every episode. I ship her Calpril. We've been pumping her soil just to maintain. We finally tested her well, and her well's at 125 parts per million alkalinity.
Natural.
And yeah, in the parts per million of the actual water are like 74. And I'm like,
Perfect.
so why did you ever go there? And she's like, because the industry is full of shit.
Yeah.
And it is. It's full of, buy the tools, buy the tricks, nothing's gonna work for you. So she's been fighting, and bless her heart, staying in business, but fighting struggling plants for years.
Yep.
She switches her water cycle over. We're done recycling her soil.
sorrow.
Oh my God, it's just like bam, bam, bam. So again, we're in that same boat of, if you have a really high source and a really low source, even blending them is probably gonna be better off than what you're using right now.
Right.
Alkalinity. All right, Carolina guy. Okay, I'm understanding this a little bit better now, but where does one source the calcite or calcite cartridges that would work for this small grow of, say, 8 plants? That man, I mean, what's the website, that one?
The one that I use, I mean, it's bulk reef supply. I use it just because of the aquarium industry, but any
Because they sell just like the tiny,
the regular 20-inch cartridges, yeah.
yeah, and I've even seen, like, you know, the Spectra Pure RO systems they
Yep.
used to sell in our industry with the little tiny, are those the 20s? Because what are those?
Yeah, those
24s?
These I think are 30-inch.
Okay, so the 20s are like the old standard Spectra Pure RO
Yeah,
system
and
style.
they're small. They're smaller diameter, shorter.
Yeah,
yeah.
Because you could get away with one of those
On
under
a small
same-
garden, right.
Yeah, no question, and then just have a bag of calcite around so you can top it off more.
Yeah. I mean, if you're in an area where you don't have access, I mean, honestly, you can go to Amazon and get Emery's calcite right off of there. They'll charge you like $80 a bag because of shipping.
Or
but-
check OCGFAM because they'll have the same
You're gonna have it.
calcite for not ripping you off price because
Yeah.
that's $80 a bag.
In an 8-light garden of 50-pound bags, it'll last you years and years and years. But-
Yeah, well, when that's it, is OCG is going to sell 8-pound refills. So people that buy that one, that's a 12-pound refill.
Yep.
So
You
we'll
will
have
have
an 8 or
cartridges already
12.
already filled.
Both that, or what we'll do is just sell them in bags for folks who buy the Spectra Pure little ones, so they can just pour into
Refill
them.
them, yeah.
But you can get little small home RO units that you can strip all the filtration out of it and pack them with calcite and get
Yeah,
the
they're
same
just
result.
Blanks. You fill them with whatever you want to fill.
Yep, and then really the calcite,
Refillable cartridges is the only thing I've ever seen them sold as.
yeah, and they're just naked. There's nothing in them. They're very, very cheap.
I take all the sponges out of them. You don't need it. You want that shit to go through it, not plug up.
Or do what fucking David Miner does and just, you know, jack your pH to 8 off your feed and then drop it with carbonated water for 8 plants. You could probably get away with probably 20 gallons of carbonated water. Got a soda stream? Use that. Charge your own CO2. Be really expensive CO2
Yeah, that'd be
though.
Real easy way of dialing it up. You know, even higher than the calcite will take you to 120. You can get it pretty much however you.
Yeah, you could
however
really
you
fine
want to
tune
run
it. Well, that'll be interesting to see what David does on that because I think he's going to start playing and see how high he can get his calcite before it just
Causes
is
a
not a
problem.
solution. Dude, he does one experiment where he's got a pressurized bottle and he's injecting CO2 in, and he's sitting there shaking it, and like I'm waiting for the thing to blow up in his
Pop.
face, but he's literally pumping CO2 and it's like slowing down, and every time a bubble would go, he shakes it and it immediately just dissipates into the water and disappears. So he's getting complete saturation in there.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
that's going to be a trick with those guys.
Yeah.
What does pig mean? This is from Brandon Griffith. What does pig mean?
Oh, what does pig mean?
No, I don't know. That'd be a curious answer. What does pig mean when he says he was at 8.0 pH wise? His slurry tests are that high? I thought slurry should be somewhere near 6.
No, I meant that before, when we were trying to combat all this, like the grow before we tried this experiment, like at day 60 when we did our final slurry to see what we ended, it was 4.9. So then we went into the next round thinking, hey, let's feed these 8.0 pH, and that was our
So your
nutrient
food.
mix. Yeah, our
Okay.
food mix. And we put it on at 8.0, and by the end it was still like 5.0. So it doesn't. That's when we learned, hey, it isn't us jacking our pH of our nutrient load.
No, so
Clear
it's-
up is not doing shit for us.
How
No,
do
that's
you
what I meant. I
remember-
didn't mean running the medium at 8.0 pH.
Yeah, no, you'd be no. That's
that'd be a bad
desert. So
Probably even worse than running a 5.0.
oh yeah, way worse. It's literally sand. It's like silicate. So, do you remember how much Olympus Up you were using at that time to get you to an 8?
Probably about 20 mils a gallon at peak feed when we were putting
Okay.
in, like 90 mils of bone meal.
So then there's that. Now I wonder if you were to take that 8 and then drop it with that carbonated water into the 6.4 and water that in, because now you're stable 6.4. It's never going to drift again and make the. So that you could have done that
Yeah.
instead of all this.
It's all new
You could have
information.
bought more Olympus Up from me
In the soda stream.
in the soda stream.
And I mean,
Yeah, and your kids
when
would
I
have
get
a
back
job.
on vacation, that might be what we're doing.
Well, he might be trying it.
Hey, what's up with the 42 soda streams in here? Making soda water. Yeah, I have a whole new employee here, just making soda
Soda
water.
waters.
All right, so that's what he meant. Feed higher, and I get a lot of that. It's like my pH is 5.2, so I've been watering it at 8.4. It doesn't balance that way, unfortunately. The downfall is 8.4 is not a food and 5.2 is not a food, so now you're building parts per million and just hydrating the plant, and eventually they just shut down and
And
then
that
the roots
was
rot.
when we had the worst results ever, and it was basically because at 8.0 we were missing the pH on that instant feed, and then the time it got down into there, it was too low to take it up, so it was
Well,
basically
that's-
starve the plants.
That's
due
a
to
very
being
important
out of
point.
pH range.
People have to understand, if you're low pH, like taking it up a tick from 6.3 to 6.6 a few feedings, that's okay to do. Correcting it with an 8 is never going to work. I mean, and we've learned that over many, many years. It's just, and worst case, if you have a 4.9 or a 5.2 pH soil and you're watering it at 8, you're killing the microbes, like you're torturing them with a synthetic, because it's literally those pH swings for microbes. They hate that. So avoid those huge swings, and we'll get that David Miner video up for the smaller grows. I think that's really going to make a huge difference. Bigger spaces, not so much, but there's other ways to do it. Getting down there, only a couple more.
Uh-oh.
Yep. Tim Baker, so what number alkalinity range do we need to run next for the gods?
I mean, I don't think there's any number set. It's all,
Stay
and it's
tuned.
not even 100% about the water. It's how now it's evolved into, what else you're putting in, what else we're going to put into this soil mix, with the Calpril and the microna, and basically making it all gel. And that's the thing, like, people want a answer for this or a solution for this, and
There isn't.
everybody's little battle is going to be their own little battle. And really, kind of like where I'm at with it now is like, you got to care enough to battle this yourself.
Well, and a lot of guys don't want to buy this
We
meter.
learned about today.
You got to be religious on your slurry test and writing that shit down, because if you do your slurry test every week and you don't write it down, by the end of the grow it means nothing, because you have nothing to trace your data
There's
back to.
No data.
Yeah.
Well, and with
Form
that
as much
too,
data as you can and keep cracking at it, and it's pretty easy once you start and you see results to keep wanting to go further and like commit yourself into this, because
Oh.
you're rewarded for it.
well, that's
The
how I
hardest
learned
stuff.
how to feed. Was like I start at 400. I see, well, can I get them to 2,600 parts per million without killing them? As soon as I see them like get tortured, I back it off 15-20%, and then they're super happy.
Yeah.
But same with this alkalinity. We know 80 to 120 is a really good,
Balanced
nice,
number.
balanced range. People are doing very well in that range, 80 to 120. Not many are getting above 120 because it takes extra CO2 charging to get
Untreaded water right now. isn't it?
yeah, and then people that are watering it too. I actually have a farm that has 220 Torrens who they're filling up their RO systems with the calcite because it's filtering it so heavy. It's now bypassing filtration and not building up in the soil. So his fucking soil has gone up to 6.9 to 7.2
Huh.
at week 4 and 5 of bloom.
Dang.
So he's in the opposite boat, where in Southern Oregon, the alkalinity in the water is through the roof. I think it's 220 out of the freaking ground. Yeah, I'm like, ah, that's wonderful. Mix that with some pond water, and holy crap, you got yourself some magic.
Yeah, and at that point you could even make RO water then and mix them to get your magic number you're looking for.
And that's it. You live in a region where you got high alkalinity, which, you know, the Midwest has that. Some parts of Washington has that. Yeah, RO water all of a sudden became a tool again because you can actually blend it to kind of dumb down your alkalinity. 220 is too high and they were getting bit. His yield was doing the same thing where plants were super healthy, yields were just dumping, but the terpenes and the oil content, everything was there, it just didn't have the size.
Yeah. And what we seen in our worst day is still a pound of light of really good quality medicine.
Oh yeah.
You know, but the difference in plant health and then here
vigor and strength.
Yeah, you want to see it, and when you add this shit, it literally doubles it. I mean, like, we're back up to 2 pounds.
And the quality's improved.
And then the quality's improved.
Oh, the qualities.
I can call it
through the
medicine
roof.
again, and
You
not
can.
call it recreational marijuana.
Yeah, before it was just crack. Now it's like feel good crack.
Yeah. You could even see
It's that natural crack.
I think the effect of it is like, it's even the buzz of it's happier. I think it's when the plants were tortured, you know, like they kind of give you this angry, down in the dumps buzz to where.
Well, they're definitely putting off something that's kind of warning you that this is not as good as it could be. And it was night and day. I mean, even the ones that you brought down that were just flower fed and ones that were full term versus ones that were last crop. And it's like,
Yeah, even the ones when we corrected it in flower and didn't do it in veg. Yeah, you got to start this shit in veg. It's all in the root.
do.
It's all in the roots,
It is. It is.
and that starts at day 1 of veg.
And then his follow-up question to that is, do we need as big of a system as pig? Because I took that video showing, and even to this day, I mean, the video I took last time that we put up here, and I'm looking right across at those filters right now, they're the same 2 that we videotaped last time, and there's 5 over there.
Yep.
So the first 2 are the only ones that were missing any. They're still the only ones missing any, and only about 1.5 inches more out of each one. So that's been about a month since I've been up here.
I'd say 2 to 3 months.
2 to 3 months?
Yeah.
Jeez, headed.
It was at least a month that you were here until the video come out. I bet that video's been out for a couple months.
Okay, so I mean, no, you don't need that big of a system. Most people can get away with a much smaller. You know, this is producing 500 gallons of water. So
This was bought before I was done dealing with it, and I bought overkill because I didn't know how much it was going to use, and
because America.
yeah. And now we got calcite.
That's why.
I don't have to change my reactor
Yeah.
for 2 years probably.
Well, and then the other thing.
But yeah,
too,
no, you don't need that much, man. And that's the thing. You need to research your water before you even go buy this thing.
Yeah, and sorry that we even did the first video because everybody ran out and bought all these things.
We got excited.
Well, it's exciting when
It
shit
is.
goes right for
Learning's
once.
exciting
It's fun.
shit, yeah.
Now, the other thing with these systems that they discovered here was that if they open the line and let it fill up these reservoirs in a timely fashion, their parts per million of their alkalinity, because the speed of the water over the surface area is so much faster, they're getting far less alkalinity, maybe 60 to 80.
If we open the valve completely up and let it free flow, we can get about 68 to where if we crank it down to where it's coming
There's
through,
a nice stream, but not blowing.
then it balances out at 120 in those first 2 cartridges.
Yeah, so water flow, line flow, piping size, everything, there's so many more variables again. But the slower it goes over there, the more it can pull off of it because it's surface area and time.
I think they're calling it exposure time.
Exposure time. Makes sense. All right, last question by Mark Maccabee. So basically, calcium in your feed and medium are key. Having enough available can really drive your plant in the right direction. Love the show and products. Good job, Scott and Pig Farmer. Hey, you even said Pig Farmer. I didn't have to make that shit up. That was right there. Well, yes, calcium is key, and hence why we're what do we call ourselves? The on-traditional, the fucking bad, I don't even know what we call
Untraditional
ourselves.
gardeners?
No, the
What
on, it's on my website. I don't go to my website. I don't get it here either. Anyway, we're the non-traditional garden product. We don't believe in the NP and K. It's always been about calcium. It's always been about the alkalinity of calcium and carbonate. I mean, that's where Frank's whole livelihood came from, is Pacific Calcium, the company. That's all he's done for 38 years, is sold calcium to farmers.
That was the spark.
that's what we brought him into this whole industry for. We're like, man, calcium, calcium, calcium. So we started making that calcium line, but not until your damn pH issue in your soil. We know our soil's good. I mean, we know it's great soil, but it has never been below. I mean, out of the bag, it shouldn't be below 7.
Yeah, you touched out of the bag, it's 7, 7.1, 7.2 with the highest.
Yeah, you had me scared, shocked. I mean, you even tried others' potting soils, you know, and bless his heart, loyal farmer, loyal friend, snuck a few pallets of a competitor's soil in just to make sure. And you know what? You have to check, because who knows? I mean, my employees could be all on crack and doing bad stuff. They're not. I have videos of them all, but you know, you just never know when shit goes. It's easier to blame someone else.
Yeah.
But when we saw that video last time, and the rooms directly across from each other, same exact everything except for the house they lived in, and I mean, that video is still on my phone. I'm like, look at the difference of just that vigor. I mean, and the other plants looked healthy. They looked happy. They were producing.
Wasn't the soil.
Yeah.
No, it definitely had the difference of what's built in, and your damn water was the key. So, again, I appreciate the platform. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the love you guys put into your farm, your grows,
We just want to see more people succeed with this shit. I mean, it's like
they are.
Yeah, we wanted to see them like, you know, happy people with it. You know,
Wow,
2 pounds versus 1 pound is happiness.
Most people would be stoked with a pound.
Yeah,
That's it. So a pound of good quality homegrown flour is a pretty good day.
Yep.
And then if we can get you 2 because you dialed in the calcium piece of this, it could be a pretty fun year.
Yep.
So again, thank you. You're a gentleman and a grower.
Thank you guys for learning this all with us.
Yeah.
It's untrenched water.
And keep asking questions. This isn't over. We're going to keep pounding through. We're going to keep finding new solutions. Fortunately, these guys are doing a ton of experiments. David Miner's doing a ton of experiments. With all the people that are pitching in, I mean, we're kind of like a non-douchebag Wikipedia of growing. You know, we want everybody's
Trial and
idea in
error.
and get the intel in, and it's not what we say, it's what we're all saying as a group, and collectively we're figuring out how to make us all better growers. So thanks for being a killer farm, guys.
You bet. Thank you guys.
All right, well, that's the show for today. Tune in soon for Bob.
The OCG Fam Show. It's pretty good. It happens every day. It's the OCG Fam Show. See you tomorrow.